Welcome back. So yesterday marked a significant milestone in the nation's history, the 70th anniversary of the adoption of the Freedom Charter. This powerful document, born from the Congress of the People in Kliptown in Soweto in 1955, laid the fundamental groundwork for the democratic and non-racial society we strive to be. It's a day for reflection on how far we've come and the promises still to be fulfilled. Joining us this morning to discuss the enduring legacy of the Freedom Charter is human rights activist Dr Allan Boesak, who's also co-founder of the UDF. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning, Dr. Boesak. I want to start off our conversation reflecting on the formation of the UDF and how the UDF would come to a decision later on in 1987 to also adopt the Freedom Charter.
Good morning, Aldrin, and good morning to all your viewers. The United Democratic Front, established in 1983, had really from its very beginnings in our thinking about what the UDF should look like and what the UDF should be doing in terms of two things. One, to bring the apartheid government to a fall, and then two, to try and shape a vision for what a truly democratic South Africa would look like. We have very consciously kept in mind the vision and the principles laid out in the Freedom Charter. So it was not difficult for people after a few years of talking about this and seeing it in practice. What does it mean to be a non-racial society, for instance, which was at the heart of both the Freedom Charter and the United Democratic Front, to adopt that Freedom Charter as a kind of foundational document. And I'm very, very, very happy that we were able to do so. And I think that people, not just the generation of then, but now, ought to still be deeply inspired by what the Freedom Charter stands for.
Yeah. And I know that you say that it wasn't difficult at the time, but if we look back at the founding of the Freedom Charter in 1955, the Congress of the People, and later on what would happen with the so-called Pan-Africanists within the ANC itself, and then we know, of course, Robert Sobukwe then later on founded the PAC, and yes, one of the contentious issues were around who does South Africa belong to. And as a non-racial organization, the UDF, how did you grapple with that particular clause?
Well, you will remember, Aldrin, that even around the establishment of the United Democratic Front, there was deep contestation. And there was another organization that claimed to be based more on the principles of Black consciousness, and the PAC that stood over against the United Democratic Front. But the fact that it was the UDF that really captured the imagination of the masses and drove people in their millions towards that organization shows what was the basic driving inspirational force. That's number one. Number two, yes, it is a difficult thing for people to say, yeah, but the land still does not belong to the people. But if you read the Freedom Charter, remember two things when they talk about the land. In the background that framed everything was that slogan that everybody accepted, which is Maebuya Africa, from what, the 1920s? So within that framework, there was no question, no debate over the issue of to whom does the land belong. When the Freedom Charter uses those first words in its opening sentences, it links the land belonging to everybody to the legitimacy of the government and the right that white people took for themselves to establish a white minority racist government to the exclusion of the vast majority. That's the immediate link. The land question is a given, and that cannot be changed. And even people in the ANC who claims the Freedom Charter for themselves today must admit that on the question of the land, we have not nearly begun to do what the Freedom Charter expects us to do.
And the ANC does actually admit that. It says out of the 10 clauses in the Freedom Charter, they've been able to achieve 80% of those, 80%. Meaning 8 out of the 10 clauses. Yeah. What's your reflection on that?
Elder, and those people will go back to school. 80% of what the Freedom Charter, I mean, if you look at our economic policies alone, what the Freedom Charter envisages and sees and wants is a kind of social democratic economy that would be much more inclusive, that would be much more redistributive in terms of the wealth and everything else and opportunities for people. What the government has chosen here in South Africa, compounding the fundamental mistakes of apartheid economically, is neoliberal capitalism, which is by design a policy that is exclusivistic, that is racialized in this country, that has as inevitable outcome things like socioeconomic inequalities, of which we are the biggest example in the world of how it must not be done. And so it looks to me as if that 80% is a miscalculation, or it is simply smoke and mirrors, or it is simply another slogan that they hope that the people will believe instead of believing what we see in front of our very eyes.
And from your assessment, Dr. Boesak, I don't know what percentage you would put on what has been achieved based on the ideals of the Freedom Charter. But what would you say are the reasons behind us not being able to achieve those? Some people are saying that some clauses in the Freedom Charter are unachievable.
I mean, I would like to know what they think is unachievable. What people might think is unachievable, say, for instance, the non-racialism clause. Excuse me. That is unachievable not because we haven't seen what non-racialism looks like and how it can be achieved in practice. We saw that in the United Democratic Front, for instance, that in the last 30 years, non-racialism has not become a reality is also by design, because the ANC decided to re-racialize and to recategorize our people in these racial categories that come from apartheid and colonialism. If they say that the wealth of the country cannot be redistributed, like in nationalizing some things, they say it either because they are captured by neoliberal capitalism and are told it cannot work, because we see what is happening in Northwest Africa today, in the Sahel. If Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso and Mali and those countries can begin to put that into practice, what is wrong with South Africa? The one thing that makes it a dubious proposition in South Africa, I mean, the state owning things, is the experience of what has happened with state-owned enterprises through incompetence and through corruption in the last 30 years. But that is not the fault of the Freedom Charter. That is not the idealism of the Freedom Charter. That is the corruption of those people in charge.
And do you think that it's still possible to have the Freedom Charter as the guiding document for the country, considering right now where we're at as a nation with a government of national unity in place?
Oh, absolutely. Not with the government of national unity in place. The government of national unity is a fundamental nullification of what the Freedom Charter would want. And simply take that very first cry from the Freedom Charter, the people shall govern. The GNU is not an example of how the people shall govern. It is a concoction at the will of a handful of white oligarchs and their black lackeys who do their will in office. But that's not the will of the people. I am convinced that the Freedom Charter was not just a simple idealistic document. I am convinced that the Freedom Charter is a fundamental vision for our people. It's a hope-giving, systematic explanation of what South Africans want their country to be. If we had used, Eldrin, the last 30 years seriously pursuing the goals of the Freedom Charter, we would not be in the position where we are today. And I'm saying, if we now take the next few years to seriously implement what the Freedom Charter laid out for South Africa, for the future of our children, and our people understand what that means, there is no reason why South Africa should not return to the fundamental principles of the Freedom Charter. And there is no reason that South Africa should be the country that our people not only need, but that our people absolutely deserve. No, the Freedom Charter for me remains a bedrock for what it is that South Africans have fought for and what it is that South Africans should fight for right now.
You had previously spoken out against the formation of the Government of National Unity with the inclusion of the Democratic Alliance. Seeing what has developed yesterday with the firing of Andrew Whitfield and the Democratic Alliance now retaliating with an ultimatum to the president by 3:30 tomorrow, there are certain actions that they need the president to take, including firing certain ministers that they believe are not fit and proper to serve in the executive. What do you read into all of this? And does it put the country in jeopardy at all, considering that stability is quite important for a nation that is still developing?
Well, first of all, Eldon, this, of course, should not surprise anybody. This is not the first shambles that the GNU has caused for itself, because as I have said, and I think to you before on this program or elsewhere, that the foundations upon which the GNU is built is foundations of sand. This house will not stand. But I'm not surprised. I mean, you know that I'm not sympathetic to the DA, but I do think that the DA has a very, very good point on this issue. Mr. Ramaphosa cannot let those other people who are clearly unfit for office in many, many ways sit in cabinet while he then decides to fire only this other DA person. And I do not know what his motivations are. To me, that is not important. What is important is that it is very clear that this GNU, as it is, will never gain the confidence of the people. It is stumbling from shambles to shambles. It has no direction. It has no vision. It has only self-interest or party interest, and it is only built on self-gratification. So that is not the interest of the people, and it will fall because such a thing cannot stand.
I wonder whether you've changed your mind, Dr. Boesak, around the national dialogue that is supposed to start in August. Have you changed your mind at all? Are you willing to participate?
I have not. In fact, the more I look at the documents that they send out and what I have seen in terms of the agenda they want to pursue, I shake my head. I mean, fundamentally, though, Eldrin, ask yourself the question. The people who are in charge of this national dialogue, who are the driving force behind this national, these are the very same people who are responsible for the misery of the last 30 years, the misdirection of the last 30 years, the misrule of the last 30 years in our country. How can those people coming out of the last 30 years pretend that they are the ones to help shape a new vision and a new future for South Africa? And on that agenda that I have seen are not at all the fundamental issues that I think we should be talking about. No, I have not changed my mind. I am still keeping my eye on the prize of a progressive People's Assembly, where from the ground up, not as now, the national dialogue is from the top down, from the ground up, our people will come together. We have those conversations already. I am excited. I am inspired. I am humbled by what I hear and how people are responding. And so we're going to have South Africa at a crossroads once again. And there will be two alternatives put on the table. And our people will this time, with the experience of 30 years, know which alternative they will choose, which one is a vision and which one is simply an entrenchment of the present state of affairs, which has not been good for us at all.
Is that a precursor to establishment of a political party?
No. I'm not talking about a political party. When I talk to people, one of the first things that I say to them, look, we now know that this political system is not right for us. This is a corrupt political system. It is not a system that allows the people to govern. So we do not want political parties in this conversation. Let them do their national dialogue. We do not even want political figures in this thing. So let them go fight their political fights within their political parties.
All right.
We really want a genuine civil society, people-driven organization, and that is what we want. And we do not foresee a political party coming out of this. We all foresee a political alternative, an economic alternative, a social alternative coming out of our conversation, not yet a political party.